Welcome to The Point of View, your favorite current affairs show on television here on City TV. This show gets the right guests, asks them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. Tonight is a big discussion on the 10% withholding tax on lottery and betting winnings, or betting and lottery winnings, whichever way you want to look at it. It's generated a lot of controversy, so we are a big panel to get into the matter. The opposition party says this is not good. It's stifling young people's economic opportunity. There's already hardship in the country. They have a rep on the show. The youth of the governing party have also spoken. The National Youth Authority CEO has a few things to say about this. I also have a referee. He's a tax expert. He will tell me whether this tax is progressive or regressive, whichever way you look at it. All of this and more when we come back. So welcome back. So tonight I have three guests. Alex Ampabing is a tax consultant and a tax expert. We speak to him on tax issues. We want to understand from him where this tax has come from and whether it's going to worsen the burden on poor people or not. Alex, great to have you. Good evening.
Good evening, Bennett.
Wonderful to have you. We also have the National Communication Officer Deputy for the NDC. Why is he here? Because they issued a strong press statement. The NDC Youth Wing issued a strong statement on the 16th of August, a day after the tax was introduced, asking the government to abolish the 10%. They call it the bet tax. They call it the bet tax. So, Malik Basintale, great to have you. Good evening.
Good evening,
Bernard. Yes. We also have the National Youth Authority CEO, who has been defending the government for implementing this tax and also refuting claims that this tax will affect the youth negatively. Pius Enamajide is here. Pius, great to have you. Good evening.
Great to be here. Good evening, Bernard.
Wonderful. So, Alex, you've been studying this 10% withholding tax on betting and lottery winnings. What is it, and what's the background? Quickly.
Thanks, Ben. This particular tax, I would say, is not really new.
Okay.
The tax was first introduced in the Income Tax Act 896 in 2015.
Okay.
And in 2015, when it was introduced, it was a standard, 5% on winnings. And this one is available on the first schedule, paragraph 81B. So there was a standard on 5% lottery winnings. Then in 2016, there were lots of arguments that, yes, somebody can stake a couple of times without winning. So why wouldn't you make provisions for an exempt amount? So in 2016, Act 907, which was an amendment of the Income Tax 896, was introduced. And what it did was to introduce an exempt amount. At that particular act, an amount of 2,592 was exempted amount. That means if you bet throughout the year and your winnings are no more than 2,592, you won't be taxed.
Okay.
So that was, most people saw that as fair. And again, any incomes above the exempt amount was a flat rate of 5%. Then in 2017, the National Lottery Authority actually made an appeal to the Ministry of Finance that they think with the influx of all the other gambling companies coming in, they were losing out. So they made an appeal for the government to actually take them out of those taxes. In an attempt to do that, the law actually exempted all companies. So from 2017, that amendment act meant that no company was paying winners, or if you call it gamblers, were no longer paying. The only thing they were paying was a VAT on the stake. So if you're going to stake, say, two Ghana cedis or 10 Ghana cedis, there was a standard VAT on it.
As
an excise tax.
Or something.
Yes, exactly. As it stands, will have been 15% plus all the other add-ons. From then on, actually the VAT was on, but the companies were absorbing it. So individuals were not feeling it at all. So in our minds, we thought the tax has been taken away, but it hasn't. From 2017, that VAT was still there.
Okay.
Until January, when Parliament made amendments And from January, now we are saying 10% of all winnings. So now they've scrapped the one on the stake, which other countries are doing. But they have scrapped it on the stake, but now there's a standard 10% on winnings. And then there's also gross tax, which is a gross gaining revenue on the companies. So now there has been an introduction of gross gaining revenue, which is the gross of the companies.
Which is also 10%?
No, 20.
Wow.
So for the companies, how much taxes have been staked and how much has been paid out, the difference is classified as your revenue. I'm sure you'll come back to
and this is gross revenue now.
Exactly. It doesn't take consideration of any expenditure.
And this is 20%. So does this apply to NLA as well? Or
yes, to all companies as it stands. Well, for what I know, unless there's a new document I'm not aware of, but that it includes all companies and includes the NLA.
So all companies involved in any kind of gambling, whether it's lottery or betting, they
or
pay
any game of chance,
20%
of their gross gaming revenue
as tax.
Yes.
In addition to the 10% of winnings paid by the winners.
Absolutely.
That's the 2,952
scrapped. It's no longer.
So even if you win 10 cedis, you pay.
Even 1 Ghana.
You pay.
Yes.
So this is the background to the tax.
That's the background to the tax. Yes.
Okay. So maybe Pius, anything else to add? Because how this became a youth discussion, I really don't understand. Because is it an admission that it's young people who stake lotto and bet for which reason? The George Operado of the NDC sent a statement. You also responded. So it seems as if this has gone to the alley of the youth. Is that an admission by government that there's the young people of Ghana who do lottery and betting?
Well, Bernard, not necessarily, but I think that Dr. Ali has done justice to the background. The fact of the matter is that we felt compelled by the statement of the National Democratic Congress to respond. As you know, I do not speak for the GRA, I speak for the youth of this country. I'm the CEO of the National Youth Authority. This is a matter that has been on our table for a long time. So we viewed this matter from two folds. The resource mobilization attempts and also the building of a noble society, a society of values and morality. And we have been worried, and we have had many stakeholder conversations, we have been worried about the increasing incidences of gambling. That is affecting even the education of kids. Bernard, our assessment indicates that you go to many of these betting sites, you see young people in uniforms betting. They should be in school. We developed a culture, and the Ghanaian is known as one who is hardworking, one who is committed to decent work and honest work. Those are our values. This penchant of young people attempting to get rich quick, in the long term, is dangerous a path to chart for any country. And so we had always advocated that governments should take steps to discourage gambling. We were looking both at legislation, we were looking at fiscal measures such as tax measures to discourage, disincentivize people from indulging in excessive betting, especially now that our own research has indicated that the vast majority of the young people of our country are drifting into that area. We are on it. We are like, it's a ticking time bomb, Bernard, in our view. So we applaud the government because we have brought up this matter before past and present officers of state, and we are excited that government is finally listening to us and implementing measures to disincentivize gambling. It cannot be the way. Arguments have been made, and I'm sure my brother Basentali will get into it about, there's unemployment, and I will give you the facts about this government's records as far as employment and so on is concerned. But be that as it may, Bernard, it is not sustainable an argument that, well, maybe because there are challenges of youth unemployment, the alternative is that we should encourage gambling and betting. That cannot be the alternative to the creation of jobs. We should be looking at the government creating an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive, because we know that the real and sustainable solution to the problem of youth unemployment is in the private sector. The young people themselves must create the jobs and create our commonwealth. So what are the interventions? We should be encouraging people who have monies. The culture of savings. You have 20 cedis today, 30 cedis tomorrow. why don't we encourage the young people to cultivate the culture of saving and grow their capital, or better still, get into small groups where we can rally and leverage on each other and come together and start to do productive things. The billionaires of the world, the Dangotes, the Jack Ma's, they didn't get to where they got to through games of chance or games of luck or betting or gambling. No, they went through the path of an intentional and deliberate decision that we are going to walk the long haul.
All right, but if I get you right, the government has two purposes for this. You want to mobilize resources by way of tax revenue, and you want to also disincentivize gambling.
Absolutely.
So it's like a sin tax.
It is.
That's what they call a sin tax. We'll come to the sin tax issue later. So Malik, that's the point. You are the people who drew the youth into this, because when the memorandum was cited, there was no mention of youth. So why did George Parado, the youth organizer, decide to take it up on himself to respond to this?
First of all, Bernard, good evening to my brother, Dr. Alex of Joaboso. I remember when we were looking forward to him winning the parliamentary seat on the ticket of the NPP. Unfortunately, he didn't go through. Probably in the near future, we'll get him on the ticket of the NPP, succeeding. He contested for parliamentary primaries. Yes, on the ticket of the NPP in Joaboso.
When
he knows
this?
it. Well, no, he knows. In 2019 or 18. 2018.
Oh, so you know each other?
No, I know him. I know Dr. Alex. He came from he was on the ticket of the NPP in Joaboso. Yes. So that's that's a tax analyst. I mean, he's done a good job. Now, it is important.
You're uncovering.
It is important, Bernard, that we situate this discussion in a context that everyone watching us will understand the purpose of which we are seated here to discuss. This is the Gaming Commissions Act. There is nowhere that it has stated that anyone engaging in an act of betting is engaging in that act in an attempt to get rich fast or quick. It hasn't been stated anywhere. If you read this entire act, it has clearly stated that it is a game of chance, it is a game to have fun, and if I support my team and I feel that let me stake on my team in order to get some dividends if my team emerges victorious. How has that suddenly become an avenue where young people want to engage in order to get rich on time? I mean, it underscores that point. I have listened to many communicators in their party and many high hierarchy people. One, they have stated that this entire tax system is an attempt to push people out of the betting scheme. Bernard, you agree with me that government that brought this act, this law into force can repeal it at any point in time. The biggest gambler in this country is the government of Ghana itself. The government, through the Lotteries Authority, manages lotteries, gambling of people of this country. The president appoints a CEO to sit there and gamble with the people of this country. Government hasn't seen the need to repeal that act. Government hasn't seen the need to close down the entire lottery system. But they think that by imposing punitive taxes on this particular services, they would move a lot of people out of it. Now, mind you, in quite recent times, they brought the tax on alcoholic beverages, cigarettes, and what have you. Before you attempt to tax any commodity, as a tax expert and as an economist, what you should be looking out for is the elasticity of that particular product. I sit here and I stake a bet of 10 Ghana cedis, and I'm to win 2,000 Ghana cedis. And government says we will take 100 cedis out of it. And you think that will frighten me not to stake 10 cedis? You think that will frighten me not to stake 100 cedis?
That's how they will take 200.
You take 200 and I'll win 1,800.
Yeah.
And you think that will deter me when I only stake 10 cedis and I'm going to get 1,800? How does that frighten any youth of this country out of betting? In other words, you have introduced 21 new taxes. Was the intention to frighten people out of businesses? Was that your intention? You have stated that betting is haram. You have stated that you don't like dog meat, but you are now pleading with the people to give you dog soup to drink. That is exactly what you are doing as a government. If you think it is not good, if you think you don't support the position of young people in this country betting, then abolish it. So that we know that your position is that you don't like it, so it should be clear. It should be sent away. The moral definition or the moral explanation to this
doesn't fly for you.
Doesn't fly for me because there's a law backing it. And if you read this entire act, it first of all states that you should be of 18 years and above, and you should bet responsibly. So if there's an act governing my practice, if there's an act governing the fact that I sit down, I watch football matches, and I think that if I stake 10 cedi and my team wins, I would get 1,800. How has that suddenly become an immoral act? That factor of immorality should be left onto the individual reasoning. If I think betting is not right based on my moral orientation, I stay out of it. But don't sit down and think that people who engage in betting are so immoral that they should be taken off the hook. That argument must be settled and settled here. The second aspect is to identify the reasons why people have decided to engage in acts of betting. You are here as the CEO of the National Youth Authority. What situations, what opportunities have you situated for the youth of this country who are engaging in these practices? Just last month, the Ghana Statistical Service enumerated over 1.7 million people who have joined the unemployment corridor. You are here as the CEO. What measures have you put in place? What have you identified? What situations have you situated in context so that the youth of this country can avoid going staking bets and then engaging in? You haven't done that. And then you sit down and you think that, look, let us impose a 10% tax, withholding tax on bet wins, and that is an easy way of mobilizing revenue. Then that brings me to his point on the fact that government simply wants to mobilize revenue. You see, Bernard, the youth of this country are really not concerned with the fact that they will have to pay more taxes to the government of this country. What they concern themselves with is the utilization of all these tax components. Quite not too long ago, you brought in e-levy. E-levy from 2022 till date has raked in close to 1 billion. What have we done with that money? How has that money reflected in the lives of the citizens of this country? Not long ago, you brought in a 50% communication service tax. How has that improved upon our communication components in this country? You brought in a flat rate, VAT 2.5. How has that, improved upon livelihoods of people in this country? Not to forget the COVID-19 1% tax you brought on board, Bola tax, that today a minister in charge who was collecting. We find dollars, pounds, and all sorts of currencies under her bed in a room. And you think that the people of this country should sit down again, so lazily, irresponsibly, you dip your fingers into their bet wins. And are you aware, Bernard, let me land on this. Are you aware that people who win bets have their monies withdrawn through mobile money? Because the betting companies slide it into your mobile money wallet and you withdraw. That is already taxed.
So you think a double taxation?
So it's a double taxation. You are taxing on something that has already been taxed.
The person
Anybody
is
who withdraws money, paying through Momo, the person pays a tax.
So the e-levy is charged, and then
you first of all tax the company,
the 20%,
the betting company.
But that's for their
it's
gross.
Already taxed.
Their gross.
But you know of a tax incidents where
but that's on the company.
Absolutely, where the producer will ultimately push on the tax burden onto the consumer. So somebody who pays 10 Ghana cedis to stake, on the betting market would only be betting on the value of 8. I mean, Ghana
you've raised a lot of issues.
Of course, Malik, the government, the company will definitely push on the tax.
I want him to address a couple, him first. So that the point about the 10, you are basically saying that a sin tax doesn't make sense.
Absolutely.
Because whether it's alcohol or cigarettes or gambling, you don't think that the tax in itself would deter if you don't consider the elasticity.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's come to him, and because I know there have been sin taxes in the past. We've had taxes on alcohol, we've had taxes on cigarettes, we've had taxes on all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So where do you sit on that point that he doesn't think the 10% on winnings is going to be effective in even achieving the moral end? He starts with that.
Yes, Ben, I think this is not something new. I mean, over and over again, a number of research within taxation has proved that elasticities, as he rightly said, play a crucial role. I was reviewing some document in Kenya when they introduced similar tax. Between 2019 to 2021, Kenya, there were quite a significant reduction For the youth, they achieve a reduction in the youth, but it actually rather increase among the adults. As to the relationship, I have no idea. But if in fact the adults actually move up to, on average, betting around 41 times.
So it was effective in reducing betting among young people.
Young people.
But it raised betting among older people.
So it's really difficult.
Or maybe the young people were betting with older people's IDs. So that the older people's numbers went
I
up.
don't want to do it themselves.
I don't know. So that's interesting.
You see, it's really difficult when you want to raise tax revenue from the angle of sin taxes, because regressivity is key. People betting don't really have the same amount of income in their pockets. So somebody's income is probably 1,000 cedis. If he bets 100 cedis, that's 10% of his income. But somebody that is earning, say, 50,000 or 20,000, he bet 10,000. It's close to nothing. So there's an element of progressivity, and for a tax to achieve its aim, progressivity is important, regardless of what form of tax. It's very difficult to base only the what do you call it? That people will stop the taxation or the gambling because of only the tax alone. So here is the point. If the idea is to change behavior, then I think the Gaming Commission and the relevant authorities have to play more part in education, maybe involving the church and the religious leaders. If the idea is to change habits, I think we need to look at other things in society that goes beyond the transactional component. However, if it's about raising revenue, which to me, where I sit, I think it's about raising revenue. I don't think I stand to be corrected, but I really don't think it's an issue.
So when you read the memorandum, listen to the finance ministry, you agree with only half of what Pius has said, because he said there are two reasons. He says it's revenue and then morality. Of
course there is, and that, if you read the last budget, page 100, the budget statement, paragraph 458, actually the minister, they talk about this reform and that they are going to introduce a token. I think that's the word he used in the budget, that they're going to introduce a token on the winnings. And to me, this is where my concern is. If the idea is to raise more, doing any study, I know 10%, it's not something too small to give away. Especially, I might be a gambler. So I'm betting on Arsenal, which is my team. So I bet on Monday, I didn't win.
I think they just won this evening.
You just won?
I think they won 1-0.
I should have bet on it then.
No.
so I'm just saying, imagine you bet 1, 2, 3, maybe 100 cedis each. I didn't win. Then the fourth time, I bet maybe 20 cedis and I win 80 cedis. As the law is, it considers each tax event as a separate entity. And that's why you cannot claim the losses from previous gambling against the current winnings. So I think reducing it to the point where it will not discourage, because remember, part of all these revenue measures are because of the IMF. You shouldn't shy away from it. The IMF made it, it's an explicit condition for us to demonstrate revenue potential. And that is why we had all those 3 new taxes introduced or amended, of which this particular tax was in the first one, which is the income tax amendment bill. So if the idea is to generate revenue, then it shouldn't necessarily be punitive to discourage more. It should rather, one, if I was in the position of the finance minister, I would do a few things. Number one would be reducing the rate, because this is a new tax.
So the 10 is high?
The 10 to me is very high. And this is a tax that is almost now in all countries. Almost. Of course, in Europe, they have special rates for the companies. But across Africa, especially East Africa, in July, Tanzania introduced their own. Uganda have their own, Kenya have their own. In fact, their rate is even much higher. And to me, I think where I sit and the revenue potential it has or able to generate, I definitely will go for much higher reduced rate. Maybe rather introduce an exempt amount
Okay.
At least let people feel that when
So that
they
the
lose-
original schedule, which had an exemption of up to 2,900, makes sense to
exactly
you.
2,592.
2,592.
I would go for maybe about 3,000 to 4,000 exempt amount.
So that only those who have higher earnings.
So if you win more, and because most of them are operating on account, most of them you have to sign up an account to be able to bet. Therefore, administration will be difficult. You have Ghana card.
So you can
easily-
track this.
easily with your Ghana card, even if you're registered with multiple.
So you're talking about tax design issues now.
Exactly. To me, that is where
we'll take a break. There are a couple of points Malik raised, which I think are interesting points. He talks about double taxation, where it says the thing is paid through mobile, so e-levy is there already. And if I even think it's triple taxation, the company is paying, e-levy is being paid, then the 10% is being applied. Then he also says if you want to reduce gambling, then you shouldn't have done this, because basically this is what puts everything together. So I would let you deal with that. Then he also says that the GSS has raised the latest number of people who are unemployed. Indeed, in fact, it's called an NEET, not an employment, education, or training. It's about 25% of people within the age bracket of 15 to 39. It's very, very serious. So you need to address this when we come back. From the Youth Authority perspective. Point of view, we're live on TV tonight. We're discussing the tax on gambling. Stay with us. Welcome back. Point of View is live tonight. We're looking at government's 10% tax on lottery and betting. And we have 3 people in studio. My guests next to me, Malik Basintali, National Communication Officer Deputy. Pius Enamhaji, the National Youth Authority CEO, Alex Ampabing, who's a tax consultant. We interview him on City regularly. So Malik raised a lot of points, which I feel Pius you need to address as well. The act that covers gaming captures all of these things. So it's in a sense saying that, like, you have licensed the thing, you are the largest operator of the thing, yet you are saying that gambling is wrong and therefore you want to use tax to reduce it. So that argument is sort of hanging. And then the whole issue of youth who are desperate and therefore, even if you don't want them to get taxation, there are more serious reasons why they are getting into gambling, which you have not dealt with. Okay, so I don't know if you want to address those points.
Well, I would, but let's avert our minds to what Doctor said earlier about the origins, the foundations in law of this legislation, which was passed in 2015. So, in fact, this is legacy was inherited. And so when we create the impression that one administration created something, we should be fair to the facts. I really don't want to get into an MPP NDC discussion on an otherwise important national matter. But it's instructive that today I hear Basintali speak and suggest that what we are discussing is a game for fun and that there cannot be any economic consideration to it, and that the young that I'm concerned about, the young people that he says have moved into a certain bracket, and you said we will speak to that. They are getting into the betting for the fun of it. They are not getting into it to get money. You can tickle yourselves and lie. You can be dishonest to the people. But any honest observer who is watching the show will know exactly why a young student in JHS, a young student in SHS, or even a young undergraduate, somebody who is not even actually prepared for the world of work yet, will go out there and take money and go and bet. We all know the reasons why people do that. And I'm saying that we have researched the matter and we have come to the conclusion that it is the penchant of young people to want to get material things, get rich quick. And we see the manifestation not only in betting area, but it is permeating the entire facets of our society. And that's why 2 young people in Kaswa will go and take another kid, murder the kid, and when they are investigated, you find out that some malam somewhere has misled them that bring the human head, will get money quick. So I'm saying that building a nation is not only on an economic strand. The morality of the society. We want to build a noble generation.
Then why are you licensing more betting companies?
I'll come to that.
Isn't that easier to stop?
I'll come to that.
Use a tax?
I'll come to that. So discuss their revenue mobilization objectives. But from where we stand, from where we made the proposal that government should take steps, including even public education, to disincentivize betting and gambling, we believe that it destroys the moral fiber of an otherwise decent country. And if people believe that Chacha is the alternative that they want to promise to the young people of our country, that is their ball of kinky. But I would not, as a responsible youth leader, argue that because for want of better expression, there are challenges of youth unemployment and so on. The alternative, the solution is that the young people of our country should be encouraged to get into betting. I'm scandalized that any meaningful organization that purports to speak for the youth will actually say that. Now, number two, we say syntax, and so why are we saying licensing? And ban it. And Doctor has indicated to you that there is plethora of evidence, literature, that syntax or high taxation can change behavior. In the case of the e-levy, it is reported that transactions, the volumes of transaction, came down after the passage of the e-levy act. True or false?
Yeah, that's true.
So taxation has not affected behavior. So what is this inconsistency we are talking about? We should take our time and study the subject matter and not just go and do politics.
Just a quick point there. The point in which I think you have to address is that there's a difference between something which is elastic and inelastic. So whatever the price of salt is, you buy it because your demand for salt is inelastic. But the price of something like, what do you call it?
That's
snaps.
Yes. That's not
it's more elastic.
That is relevant to
my point is that what you need to look at is if gambling is something people do compulsively, whether the tax is applied on it or not, they will still gamble. But for e-levy, where they can opt out and use cash, they wouldn't do it. So my point is that in discussing that, we just need to look at, it's not just a question of tax.
Bernard,
he will agree with me.
I've just said to you that there is literature. We have done some work. Even in the matter of consumption of cigarettes and alcohol, all over the globe, taxation has increased. At the end of the day, people are motivated by what they gain or what they lose.
So you want to reduce? You believe that this will reduce the propensity of young people to gamble?
And there is evidence that in Kenya, for instance, when the law was passed, behavior in young people decreased. Betting decreased in young people. For 40%. So there is evidence on the ground. So if you don't understand the matter and you have not looked at the figures, well, you can run off and say whatever you want to say. But we know that as a fiscal measure, taxation can actually aid the behavior change of a group of persons. And that is established. Now, first of all, by the way, Bernard, there is no taxation on mobile money withdrawals, cash outs.
Yes, that's true.
So let's be honest to the facts. Let's understand the issues.
It's on the transactions.
It's just on the transactions, not the cash out and the withdrawals. So this question about double taxation, but Bernard, at the end of the day,
let me just get that point. So if somebody gambles and wins and they pay them via Momo, it's a transaction.
The cash out, it's like me.
No, for the company's merchant.
It's different.
That's right.
So the company pays to the winner, and then when the winner makes a transaction, he pays e-levy. So doesn't the merchant pay for the transaction of paying the winner? That's not e-levies. Just go on.
Okay. So Bernard, we want a government that is responsible enough to build the roads, build the schools, create the environment, and create the jobs. The question we have to ask ourselves is that how does government make money? Raise revenue through taxation, loans. We have all come to a point that we say that we have borrowed quite a little bit too much.
A lot.
And we should discourage the pressure of borrowing, and that we should raise revenue internally. Is that another point?
Yeah.
So for me, if any responsible government gets creative, discourages negative behavior, whilst at the same time that government raises revenue, I think that government is thinking big. I think that that's the kind of government that the people of Ghana deserve. And we must understand that changing the lot of a people is a process and not an event. Bernard, I can report to you that within the last 6 or so years, about 2.1 million people have been employed. About 1.2 in the public sector, really and truly unprecedented in terms of the Fourth Republic.
Sorry,
1.2.
Can you repeat what you said?
I'm saying that within the last 6 years.
The last 6 years.
Yes. 2.1 million. And this is highest for any government that has had the 2 terms. Yes.
In which institution?
I'll give you 1.2 in the public sector, 975,000 in the informal sector, but we are able to trace it through the SNIT contribution. If you go to SNIT, within the time under reference, SNIT has new registrants, new SNIT beneficiaries, 957,000. The biggest for the 6 years for any government that has had 8 years. The NDC has had 8 years. But I've not suggested that the problem of youth unemployment has been resolved. No. But the fact is that no government within the Fourth Republic has done better in terms of the numbers that I've just given you. And we know, we saw the Association of Unemployed Graduates in this country. We know the backlog that was created because a government that was not faced with COVID or Russia or Ukraine had to go to the IMF for policy credibility, and the conditionalities meant that we could not do some levels of recruitment into the public space and so on. We know. Now we see the increased numbers of young people who are being recruited. But I've not suggested that all the young people of our country have gotten jobs. And I said to you that it is about creating an enabling environment for the public sector, the private sector, and the young people themselves to create jobs and create our commonwealth. And I've given you that, for instance, what is the idea of the U-Start? The U-Start is to remove that barrier of access to finance so that the young people of Ghana can create their wealth. And we are injecting some 10 billion over the next 3 years to create some 1 million jobs. You know the NEIP, you know the SY National Board for Small Scale Industries, the legacy of the NDC. You get into those offices and you find cobwebs, very dysfunctional, non-performing NBSSI. Today, revamped, refinanced, repositioned, loaning out, giving monies in notable cash, millions of CDs to the young people of this country to be able to create the wealth that we are talking about and the jobs that we need. You talk about the reforms in our education, for instance. Now, there is a focus on technical and vocational education. You go to China, it's about TVET. You go to Germany, it's about TVET. Now, there is even a full agency. After the passage of the Pre-Tertiary Education Act, there is now an agency dedicated to
said a lot of
technical and vocational.
I just wanted to point out to you quickly before I bring him that. So the 1.2 million plus 925K it sounds big, but always remember that it's a ratio, because the GSS said that 25% of that age group was neither working. So I'm just saying that you see, the population of Ghana is growing.
You're right.
So now that you are in office,
you're right,
there may be more younger people. So even though 1.2 million sounds like a lot of people, about 25% of them, according to the GSS, are neither in employment, education, or training, which is very serious.
I agree with you, Ben.
So I don't downplay the point you have made about the number of people employed. I'm just pointing that to you.
I agree with you.
No, I don't want to do so. I'm just telling you.
No, I agree with you. I need to make a point.
No, it's okay. I want to take his comments now.
Absolutely.
No, but I want to, before you answer his question,
Right.
you have to address the point. It's your government that introduces the whole thing. 5% on winnings. So why are you now going to pick it 2015?
It's not true.
That's what?
First of all,
Yeah.
there's a difference between a tax on lotteries and a tax on bettors. These are guided by separate acts. So there's a Lotteries Act and there's a Gaming Act that covers betting. Now, the 5% Doc spoke about, if you listen to him carefully, aside capping it to the 2,600 bettings above that range, it was a tax on stakes, not a tax on winnings.
On the winnings. Okay.
These are two different things, and I think that if you...
So for those who don't understand,
absolutely,
let's explain. The stake is the attempt.
The attempt.
So if I'm paying 10
absolutely
to bet,
no. How is that works? How is that works in this context? Please, you had your time. When no, let me make this point. You will come.
Yeah.
The 5% was on staking, not winning. These are two different things.
Makes it worse.
And so, I mean, it clarifies that matter. You have...
So just hold on. So if I have 10 cedis and I want to bet, the 5% means I'll pay 50 pesos.
That's to the company.
Because
so you pay your 10 cedi to the company. Government deducts 5 cedis out of it.
What
So it
the
affects the
company
company.
thinks- okay,
not you, the individual.
Okay, fair enough. Go on.
These are two different things,
Go
and
on.
I think that you must listen and listen carefully to that point. The second part is that you have stated that there are many people in GSS and under 18 who engage in betting, and so the attempt to stop it means you must tax it. Go and check the board of the Betting Commission. There's a representative of the police, Ghana Police Service. There's a representative of the Interior Minister. The reason for this representation is to check underage bettors. And so if you want to implement anything, go and implement the law that guides responsible betting in this country. The police officer shouldn't just sit on the board and be taking commission or allowances.
I think they were put there because they
They
were
were put there because they were to enforce the law and ensure that people below the ages of 18 years do not engage in betting, because it's an irresponsible act. And so we must check your point from that angle, if that is what you want to allude to. Now, you spoke about people, again, being moved out of that bracket because they bet, and so you've imposed that tax on them. Now, Bernard, you have told people, go and bet. When you win, give me 10%. And that is your strategy for pushing people out.
What's told people?
This is to simplify this tax.
No, it's been over.
Go, please, I beg your pardon.
No, but
Go, please,
I didn't say. You
go
have
and
said.
bet.
I haven't said that.
I am
You
simplifying it. Please, don't be
Please, you
jittery.
don't be too
Listen, no.
simplistic.
I want to be simplistic
No,
in this
don't be
argument.
my points.
Your
You can be simplistic in
10%
argument.
tax. Oh, can you allow me? Your 10% tax means that go and bet. When you win, give me 10%. So go and bet. When you win, give me 10%. And that is your idea of kicking people out of the betting industry. How irresponsible that thought can be. Because, I mean, clearly, how do you push people out of this dark net? You used e-levy as an example. Go and read the Afrobarometer report on that agency. In fact, the reasons why government was not accruing a lot from its taxation was because people devised means of avoiding it. And that is why government in its phase 2 implementation came out with a strategy to cure loopholes. Are you aware that those times, when you even make transactions to merchant lines from your own transaction wallet, you weren't obliged to pay any tax? It was a free entry. Government came out with procedures. The only procedure they've not been able to cap is the cash out procedure. And there are many people out there using that strategy. So if you as a government decide to learn how to fly without pitching, we as citizens may also decide to learn how to shoot without missing.
And
that is how people.
You admit that the point.
That is how you did not achieve
the point
your
is,
tax.
The point is basically making.
No.
Just a quick point. The point
Right.
is that taxes change behavior as a general principle.
Absolutely.
So that point was based on the e-levy.
Absolutely.
So that one cannot be denied.
And so I've explained the fact that taxing bets, go and stake, when you win, give me 10%, is not a responsible measure of pushing people out of betting. There are other alternatives you may use.
How do you prove
so.
that?
I mean,
because he just cited. Okay, so for example, he
Absolutely.
cited Kenya. You
Right.
have not disputed that.
That
in Kenya, the number of young people betting reduced by 40-something%. Now, so you can't just come and say it's not true. What's the evidence that it will not happen? Just we are dealing with facts here.
Are you also aware that if the people instituted a tax measure in Kenya, they provided job alternatives for the people who were engaged in this
I
act?
mean, what alternative?
And so, you
What
have,
alternative?
please, you have sat here to give alternative employment measures that your government has provided. And then when you forced him to give you one sector that employment took place, or one job creation that was established under their government, he said you should go and check SNET. Are you aware that private people, so if I create my company and I'm paying SNET, and SNET contributors go high, it means your government is employing a lot.
No, I mentioned the government,
If you want
and then he added, is there 1.2 plus 975?
So if you want to prove to us that you have employed a lot, show us the agencies that you have employed onto.
But government
show
job,
us the
no,
new
but Malik,
employment mechanisms
government job is
that you
not,
have created.
no, government job is not just to employ. It's to create an environment where employment can be created.
And so
what we are looking for is not government employment.
Right.
What we are looking for is employment in the country.
Absolutely. And if you want to create employment in a country and you end up taxing all these agencies, how do you create that employment? So if I today, Bernard, hold on, if I today I decide to set up my entity and then as a result of setting up my entity, I employ 5 people, and I pay straight contributions for my employees. It means government has succeeded.
Because if your company collapsed,
right,
without government coming there, you blame the government. So now you're able to create your company in. It's the same thing.
You would have collapsed.
So once an economy allows you to create employment, the government will take the credit for it.
It depends on the avenue the government created for me to create.
But that's why the U.S. government, the U.S. government will come up with the employment figure, not the jobs created by U.S. government.
Absolutely.
They look at the number of people who have been employed in the
Bernard, it is understandable that in job creation, both the private and public sector comes to bear. That is understandable. The point we are raising here is that what measures has government instituted to operationalize a serene environment for governments to be situated in the economy?
We'll take a short
that is all we are asking. And I can give examples of what we did.
When we come back, we will take final comments from each person in relation to this tax on lottery and betting. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'll read a few quick comments. Apia, who is from CAT, says, I agree that gambling income is also an income. However, tax must be fair. Can we also find ways and means to allow winners deduct their losses? If we cannot allow winners deduct their losses, then the government should reduce the rate to 5%. Then this one is from Opemu Chofache Ameuga. Tell Pius that NLA, a state agency, is there to promote and regulate lottery and betting. What is this? Is argument about changing behaviors. To change behavior, tax the stake so the individual will feel the pinch, whether win or lose. That's how you change behavior. All right, let's wrap up. Give me 2 or 3 recommendations for government. You are a tax design person. You're saying 10% is too high. You agree that sin taxes play a role. It can change behavior. So give me 2 quick things you think the GRA should do to tidy this up.
Well, Ben, I mean, as a person where I sit, I wouldn't ordinarily support this kind of tax because I think if the tax cannot take consideration of your losses, then how do you justify the winnings? But obviously, it has been now all over, and in Africa especially, 2023, most African countries are going for it as a response to the COVID and trying to raise revenue. So in that case, yes, but I think, and the idea is if you want to generate revenue, then the decision shouldn't be necessarily punitive. You should, a system should be that reasonable in order to encourage, well, it might discourage maybe the few 1 or 2%, but if the rate is also lower, the revenue that we seek will be able to generate, because the country is going through some of the most difficult things. I also recommend that government introduce at least 3,000 Ghana as the exempt amount. If you could have that, 2,500 in 2016-17.
So that makes it more progressive.
At least, yes.
So that those who earn below 3K, they know their winnings are not touched. And then those who earn above.
Then you can tax.
So that to make it less regressive.
And it's possible because with Ghana card, people register through an account.
So you will know.
They bet on account. Definitely it's possible. If
will you take that advice?
No.
Reduce the 10% and then create a minimum. And we are wrapping up in 2 minutes. What was your last one?
The last one, maybe another thing I believe some companies can do, and I've seen that in Kenya, is that some companies are actually absorbing the taxes.
Some companies absorb it.
Yes.
So instead of passing it on, the company absorb it.
The companies are absorbing it. So maybe there's also an option for
will you
companies.
reduce the 10%? Would you recommend to reduce the 10%?
No. In fact,
would you let them meet a minimum threshold of 3K?
No. I've said to you that our view at the National Youth Authority, which we have come to after extensive consultation, is that we should incentivize betting. Reducing the tax percent will be counterproductive to the character formation agenda.
So it's not going to happen.
So for us at the National Youth Authority, going forward.
You want them to raise it?
Absolutely. Because Bernard, it is about the kind of future we are building for our promoting. That's where we are coming from.
Fair enough.
Now, number 2, I talked about how government raises revenue. I'll give you an example. Do you know that, Bernard, you pay your income tax on your hard work, legitimate work, not a game of chance? You know you pay income tax?
Yes.
How much? What is the percentage?
I think it's 25.
Exactly. That's revenue to you. Do you know that when you are gifted something, a gift, you pay taxes on gifts?
Yes.
Gifts.
I'm supposed to pay.
So we are saying that there is a way for people to make income. But because it is too betting, it should not be taxed.
So it doesn't.
I mean, and the NDC, they are the ones who passed all these laws I made reference to. Even the tax on gifts, they are the ones who brought it.
First of all,
even gifts.
The NDC's position is
Last
simple.
comment.
We feel that the 10% tax on bet winnings is a lazy and irresponsible way of government to accrue revenue from the youth of this country. The second point we believe in is that government hasn't demonstrated to the youth of this country that taxes they have already accrued was properly spent and utilized. What the youth of this country are afraid of is that after taxing them, the president will be found flying a £14,000 private jet an hour in the sky.
Are you going to
The president, no, that is the fear of the Ghanaian youth of this country. And the Ghanaian people,
So
again, are scared that people, appointees of this government, after taxing and doing a lot, will recklessly waste the resources and
I wanted
taxes
to
of
ask
this
you a
country.
question about your
The
plan.
picketing will come on, and I will state here, the position of the NDC is a total scrap of the 10% tax
Not even a reduction.
on bet wins
Scrap
on the
the whole
youth of
thing.
this
This is
country.
populist.
And further provide alternatives.
Bernard,
As CEO
check the
for the
language.
Youth Employment
Thank you very much.
Agency, you should concern yourself with providing employment opportunities for the young people in this country. And not to tax them
been listening
and
to-
speak of increasing taxes on the young people in this country.
Thank you. We've been listening to Malik Basin Tale, who's the Deputy Communication Officer of the NDC.
Taxation must
Pius
stop.
Enam
The reckless
Hajide
expenditure
is
must stop,
the
and the NDC will picket
NYACO, and Alex Ampabing. And Alex Ampabing is a tax expert. Apologies for the way the show is ending. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
But very responsible.
Okay, no, let me say.
comments like this cannot build the country either.
Let me say, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate your time. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.